Present.
Trustee Pulido,
Present.
and Trustee Bloom.
Here.
Quorum is present. So now we will move on to the first item, which is the approval of the agenda. I do want to make an adjustment, which is tabling item 13B.
13B.
13B is the consideration to approve a board policy regarding recognition of board members who completed their terms. I believe we wanted to table it because we thought that we would need a little bit more time to discuss what that would look like. Do we have any other changes or adjustments?
I don't have a change. I just wanted to mention that for the school accountability report cards, we did change out the attachment for Los Robles Ronald McNair. So you received that ahead of time. And the only change is that there was one section that just wasn't showing up on the document. But the agenda item still stands.
Perfect. Thank you. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomahin,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0. So now we will move into closed session. And we will see everyone later.
Trustee Latu, for the record, we're going into closed session at 6:32.
David, did you need to speak with me? Everyone is, yes. You're public and being recorded. You want to, yeah, about 7:15 approximately. They won't come earlier than that, but they might come a little later. Is that everybody back?
Yes, I believe everybody's back.
Welcome back.
So we will resume open session at 7:16. So for just reporting back on the actions that we took during closed session, for 3A, there was no report and no discussion. For the 3B, there was discussion and there was no actions that were taken. So we move on to item,
Through the chair, President Latu, I believe that there was a change to the agenda, correct? Wasn't an item like tabled?
oh, yes. Item 13B was tabled. I mean, yeah, 13B.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
No, I'm sorry, it's 13. Find it in a second. Yes, it's 13B, President Latu.
Gotcha. So we will move to item 5, which is from the floor. So during this time, we invite the public to speak to the board on any matter that is not related to the agenda. So if there's anything that is not agendized, you're able to speak at this time. So if you would like to speak, you may also do so by using the raise hand function. I do not see any. So let's move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomahin,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0. So we will move on to item 7, which is a special recognition. This item, so this section 7A, recognition of Trustee Marielena Gaona Mendoza for completing 1 term as a board member. So the Board of Trustees would like to officially recognize Marielena Gaona Mendoza for her service to the students, staff, and families of the Ravenswood City School District between 2016 and 2020. Marielena holds a long career in education in the peninsula, beginning in the early 2000s, and is currently a special education teacher in Redwood City. So for this section, I thought that it was really important that we highlight the service that has come before us, especially when it comes to board members. And so if anybody else would like to share at this time, I'm going to open the floor.
Were you opening for comments from the board or from speakers?
Oh, so I'll open this to the, I'll open for comments from the board.
Got it. Okay, so through the chair, I said my comments, I think a couple meetings ago, but I'm happy to repeat the fact that I appreciate the time any individual invests into doing public service, to serving on a board. It's very much a commitment of one's time and energy. And I know that Trustee Gaona was very passionate about what she did. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, thank you for the time that you were on the board and for your investment into the district. And, you know, we're hoping to see her in the future. I'm sure we will. So, yes.
Through the chair, I echo that gratitude as expressed by both you, President Latu, and Trustee Pulido. I only worked with Marielena Gaona Mendoza for 2 years of my term, and I also got to witness some of that excitement and passion that she had for the community. I think she was like, one of those people whose leadership style is like truly on the ground, interacting and engaging with people, and that's something certainly admirable because I think that's what this position requires. So that's awesome. And I also echo Trustee Pulido's comments that anyone, for whatever length that you volunteer to do this kind of work, it's amazing and it's a service. And so just want to say thank you wherever she is. Don't know if she's here at the meeting or listening or not, but just want to express my gratitude as well. So thanks for making the space to do it.
Through the chair. I'd also like to express that I had worked with Marielena Gaona also when she was a teacher, an integrated services teacher at Bellhaven, and her dedication to her students was always very, very apparent. And as a board member, I still saw that she was constantly thinking about the students. And I wanted to acknowledge that as well. Thank you for making this space available.
Through the chair, I think my first experience with Marielena was actually on the campaign trail. And so I definitely see that passion and that ability to want to do what's best for the community and also inviting others to be part of the community. And that's something that I saw over and over again in every forum that we had, is just that invitation, like that we should all be caring about this and we should all be considering it and we should get involved. And so I truly appreciate that and know that she has a heart for students in this community. So I am thankful that I got to meet her and hopefully we'll see her more in the community as well.
Thank you. I'll also open it up to the public as well. If any one also wants to share, we'll give you that time. I think when it comes to being part of a board, especially like you all highlighted, it takes a certain amount of passion and love to really serve. And that's why I just thought that this would be a great time. And also we can think of ways that we can also highlight anyone else who's served or participated on the board since the beginning of Ravenswood. So I do not see any hands. So we will move on to 8A, which is a consideration to rename the Bellhaven Kindergarten Garden. And so I will pass it along to Principal Michelle Misuda. Oh, I see Rhonda White.
Yeah, through the chair, we do have one speaker.
Awesome.
It does not look like I have been given the ability to allow Ms. White to.
Apologies.
It looks like the host has been kicked off, maybe due to internet issues.
I think I saw that Gina is now a host, but I don't know if she's still on the call.
I think she might have been for a moment and then
Um,
lost connection.
David is also a host. If you want to pass the hosting to Trustee Alexander, she can allow Ms. White to speak, and then I guess we will figure out how to get our district folks back. Oh, there's Gina.
Which is perfect. It's given us more time.
So
Yes, internet instability.
Gina, Can you?
Chair, if Ms. Sudaria, if you can make me a host so I can unmute a speaker.
I'm back up. I don't have access to make you a host. Solomon will come back and do that.
All right, so through the chair, we do have two speakers waiting, Ms. Rhonda White and Mr. Dean Larson. And so when we do have that ability, if you guys can hang on, we'll let you speak.
Thank you.
You know, since you're a host, you're not able to bring them in. I mean, given that you're a host.
Because I dropped off, I lost that access, that
Yeah.
privilege. And so did Solomon. So he's reconnecting right now.
Hi, everyone. I just kindly ask that you give us a little grace right now as we are suffering from a little bit of tech issues. So if you need to use the bathroom, get some water, now's your time.
I believe I am back up.
Okay, let's continue.
We're back. I'm sorry, who should be brought in as a participant?
Trustee Alexander.
Through the chair, it's Ms. Rhonda White and Mr. Dean Larson are both waiting to talk.
Got it. Let's go with Rhonda first.
Good evening, board president, trustees, superintendent, community, staff, families. President Latu, thank you so much for seeing me. I got ready to press my button to talk about Trustee Gaona, and my son asked me something and then went. And so thank you for seeing that. I appreciate it. Just want to say and echo what everyone else has said. Thank you to Marielena Gaona Mendoza for her 4 years of service in the Ravenswood City School District. The teachers are always excited when a board member can come in and be passionate about students and be on the ground floor. So I just wanted to also echo the board's sentiment on being a service to the community, because late Thursday nights, the packets, the back and forth, it's a big commitment and we appreciate it. Our families need it, our teachers need it. It's what we want, what's best for the community. I'm gonna re-raise my hand, but it'll be afterwards to talk about Jose Ibarra, the renaming, just so everybody knows. Thank you.
Hey, Dean Larson, sorry. You can speak now, Dean, if you unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and see you.
You can. Okay, great. Hi, thank you for this chance to speak. The garden is something that Jose started, and he was very pleased that it grew into something much larger than what he ever dreamed it would be.
Mr. Larson, sorry, we're not on item 8A right now. We're still in section 7A, which is the recognition of Trustee Marielena. So just to hold your comment until the next section.
Of course, sorry about that.
Thank you, sorry about that. So if we don't have any more speakers for 7A, we will move forward into 8A, and I will pass this along to Principal Michelle Masuda.
Great. Good evening. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Good evening, board. President Latu, Superintendent Sudaria. Thanks so much for having me. So I just wanted to share that we would like to rename our Bellhaven Garden after Jose Ibarra, who has now passed. It's been a year since he's passed, and we would like to honor him by renaming our garden, since that was his big project at Bellhaven, as well as to paint a mural up along the kindergarten wall. So Mr. Larson was actually the person who designed the mural, and he has more detail about each individual specific item that's on the mural. But we felt like as a Bellhaven community, and not just the parents and staff at school, but as a whole community, that we'd like to honor him. The site council had unanimously approved both renaming. So then we just wanted to bring it to you for final approval.
Thank you. I will open up. I'll open up the floor to the board if the board has any comment.
Also, through the chair, I believe Dean Larson was going to share a little bit about the mural.
Oh, okay.
You want to hear it now before comments from trustees?
Yes.
I have an image of the mural design here. I don't know if you've received that, but if it's possible to do a screen share, I can go over the various elements very quickly for you, so you can see the entire design and then understand all the concepts and the ideas behind it, if that would be helpful.
Okay, yes, you can share your screen.
Can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again. And this is the mural design for the wall of the kindergarten school next to the new playground, which is just very close to where the garden is located as well. Bellhaven already has a tradition of murals, and so this would add to the murals that are already there, and it would be a nice addition. All the letters of the alphabet are included. Some are obvious and some are not so obvious, like the letter S on the far right, next to the edge, and then the letter V of the legs with the girl reading the laptop. Okay, the mural would include a very diverse student body. It would include students of special needs. There's an interactive element in the mural. If you look in the lower center, there is a water bucket that's just floating, and the students would be able to, if they put their hands in the right position, they would be able to be photographed as if they're part of the mural. They're involved in the mural, where they're holding the water bucket, watering the plant. They're on the far left, a paintbrush, and in the right side in the grass, you see a guitar, and then above the letter S on the far right, there's a dancer. So there's a representation of the arts, and there is a garden in the background, and there are many, many, many books in the painting representing the love of reading for the students and encouraging them to read more. And the design here is fairly finished, but it will be refined a little bit more. You'll see like the laptop that the girl in the purple shirt is reading, and then there's an iPad that the boy running down the hill will be carrying. And yeah, and that's about it. You'll obviously notice a great big B and a great big H right in the middle, which obviously stands for Belhaven. So thank you.
Thank you. So now I'll open if there's any comment from the board.
To the chair, I have a question and a comment. First, I'm wondering, are we pitching any local companies for product placement in the mural? We could put an Apple on the laptop just and get some money. I'm just kidding. Sorry, Apple. Sorry. And so my real comment is, number one, I love the design. I love that it feels like active participatory art, right? Like this kind of find the letters, and then I love how you can, you know, be in the mural with the picture if you put your hand near the watering pitcher. I think that's awesome. So kudos to the designer of the mural, and I think it's a beautiful representation of the joy that Mr. Ibarra brought to so many people. So just job well done.
Through the chair, I just wanted to add, I know for the ones that got to meet Mr. Ibarra and know his impact on not only Belhaven, but Ravenswood, there are a lot of community that are happy to see this project and its completion. We always talked about wanting to commemorate his time with Ravenswood. I mean, he dedicated himself to kids, and everyone knew who he was in the district. And that was also a man of great passion as far as standing up for what he believed in. So I'm glad to see that we're finally able to kind of come to a conclusion as far as how we were going to commemorate him. And I think
through the chair. I have a question. I mean, I love the mural. I've loved it since the first time I saw it. Dean, it is absolutely beautiful what you've done there. And what a wonderful commemoration of Mr. Ibarra. I had the privilege of working with him for about 8 years. Question I have is, which wall were you planning on putting this mural? I've been, walking around the back of the kindergarten classrooms there, and I'm wondering if it's going along the back wall where those planters are, or if it's going to be going along multiple walls, or if it's going along the front of the kindergarten classrooms in the hallway, or where.
Can I respond, Trustee Alexandra, through the chair? Michelle, did you also want to share? Because I can share the screen so you can see a visual of actually where it's going to be.
Sure.
It's also attached in on the agenda. Can you see this area?
So the mural would be on the side of the first kindergarten room. That's brick. And we chose that wall because there weren't any pipes there to block or make it an awkward image. And so that mural would also be facing out towards the side street. So then everybody who walks by would also be able to see it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just echo what everyone said. I love the mural. It reminds me of just growing up in this community and kind of bringing back that old flavor that we're seeing less of, which is murals everywhere. And to read Ibarra's story as well was really moving. So I'm really happy to see this, fingers crossed, pass, but the work coming forward. So I will open the floor to the public. And so if there's, so I see 2 hands raised or 1. So from Rhonda White.
So Rhonda, I've just promoted you to be able to speak.
Hello. Oh,
Go ahead, Ms. White.
okay. Sorry. I was just trying to take off my screen, but I can't do that. I can't figure that out. Oh, poor Rhonda. Hello, everyone. President Latu, Trustee, Superintendent Sudaria. I am just echoing what everyone has said to just say how thankful and grateful we are for Dean drawing a mural that depicts and tells a story about who Jose is and was, and that we are able to have that in the garden, and for the mural to be painted as well as for the garden to be named after him. Not just him, but his family, our legacy to Belhaven, to the community, to the families, and especially to the students who have had him. Those just from last year, as well as those from the last 20 years. So I'm just thankful that we're at this place where we're able to do this. Thank you so much.
Dean, I see that your hand is up, so I will pass it to you.
Just one more thing. Ref has agreed to fund for all the materials. So that part has already been worked out as well. I wanted to be sure to mention that. So there would be no expenses for Ravenswood. So.
And may I clarify through the chair with that is that there was actually money donated in the name of Jose Ibarra. So that money will be used towards the murals.
Through the chair, we have another speaker. We have Lupe Ibarra. And Lupe, I've just promoted you, so you should be able to talk.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board and the superintendent for allowing the Ibarra family and Dean to be able to honor Jose. I've actually was a part of the renaming of the school board a committee. Unfortunately, that wasn't that didn't fall through. But being able to have this mirror be put up, and also giving us the opportunity to volunteer and be a part of all this. I just wanted to say again, I'm very grateful. It was an honor to also work on the garden on December 9th. My father took part of that, and he was very delighted. We're looking forward to work on the other parts of the garden at Belhaven as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there are no other speakers.
There are no other speakers. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the proposal to rename the Belhaven Kindergarten and to paint a mural in honor of Jose Ibarra, the former Belhaven kindergarten teacher.
I second it.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomahin,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We will move on to 8B, and I will pass it back to Superintendent Gina Sudaria.
Thank you. 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay. So I will be presenting on 3 items. The first one is our back to campus for in-person instruction, which is a proposal that we would like the board to consider to take action on. It's item 8B. There'll be 3 items or agenda items I will touch upon. One is giving an update on this California Department of Public Health, brief update, and then also its impact on the proposal that we shared with the board on January 12th. So the California Department of Public Health developed a framework to support schools as they decide when and how to implement in-person instruction. And this was actually released 2 days after we made our presentation to the board about our proposal to bring back urgent learners. So this guidance is a public health directive that applies to all public and private schools operating in California. It supersedes previous COVID-19 and Cal OSHA school guidance, but does not modify or supersede the guidance related to cohorts for children and youth. Those are like cohorts that we find at our learning hubs, for example. It was intended to developed to support schools as they determine how to implement in-person instruction for the remainder of this academic year. Let me move you guys over. Okay. So our proposal to bring back urgent learners does not count as reopening school under the new state guidance. Ravenswood waiver proposal is to bring some of our urgent learners back on campus, and that doesn't qualify as opening or reopening school. We are not yet offering everyone in a grade the opportunity to return in-person learning. So our proposal falls under the state guidelines for bringing small cohorts for specialized support. The impact on our proposal that we presented to you last week is that we do not need a waiver to bring TK and unique learners on campus for in-person instruction while in the purple tier. So we do not need to wait for the county approval of our waiver submitted last week. And our proposal falls under the state guidance around providing targeted specialized support and services for just one specific TK class and for students with moderate to severe disabilities. Those are our unique learners. There is no requirement for county state approval before schools bring back cohorts for specialized support. And cohorts are stable groups of students with no more than 16 individuals who are meeting for targeted supports and intervention services under the direction of the LEA, the district, while the school is closed to in-person instruction and in addition to distance learning. So our school improvement working group recommends bringing urgent learners back under these conditions. But the update again is that we don't need a waiver. So under the purple tier condition, we would want to cross that out. And again, just as a reminder, the 3 conditions are that in the purple tier, we would only bring back a very small number of students with the waiver spelling out specific health protocols and conditions to ensure their safety. That was already submitted. We don't need to wait for that. We will still obviously follow those same health protocols and conditions. In the red tier, we've had 2 weeks of declining cases. Then we would then consider bringing back all of our urgent learners, including TK through 1st grade, newcomers, and students with special needs, including those who are mild to moderate students. And if we're in the orange tier, we would then bring these students back, obviously a bit faster. Okay, and just a reminder, it is very important to note that we are only proposing to bring back urgent learners and staff who volunteer to return. All right, so all families will still have the option to stay with distance learning. We already follow the strong safety protocols for current staff and Learning Hub students, and we will just proceed with that as well as we wait, but also as we prepare to open up campus for these urgent learners, specifically the TK and preschool. So the recommended motion for the board is to please request, we request the board to approve the plan to bring urgent learners to campus for in-person instruction. And we recommend the board to approve item 8B, School Improvement Working Group's recommendation to bring students on campus, and then specifically bring TK and unique learners back on campus as early as the week of January 25th under the classification of small group cohort.
So now I'll open the floor if there's any questions or comments from the board. I see none, so I will open it up to the public.
Oh, sorry, through the chair. I have a question. I under three circumstances, we don't need a waiver. However, are what's going on with the plan that we would submit to San Mateo County Office of Education? Because aren't schools supposed to submit plans? Or is your point, because we don't need a waiver, we're not going to submit a plan? So I just need a little bit of information about the plan.
Yeah, actually, the submission of the waiver goes through the county, who then sends it off to the California Department.
So when you say waiver, do you mean the reopening school plan?
Mm-hmm. There's a waiver that highlights specifically what you're doing with those cohorts or the grade levels that you're going to open up with. And then you also have to update it and tie it to the recovery plan. And there's specific areas in your recovery plan that you have to summarize in the waiver so they know exactly where to look to make sure you have everything in place.
Okay, so this includes like the 4 pillars and everything, all those procedures.
Correct.
So when will we be able to see the plan or the waiver, however you want to reference it?
The waiver is available. I can forward it to the board as soon as possible.
Yeah, not just the application, but the actual plan that goes with it. Yes.
It's actually on the website as well. The recovery plan is on our website.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, one last comment. I just want to say for the record, I am somewhat disappointed by the fact that even under the orange tier, we're only going to be bringing back TK through, I believe, 1st or 2nd grade. Given that we would potentially be in the orange tier, I think that unless I read that incorrectly on the slide, you know, we're more or less not going to have any really significant changes between the purple, red, orange tier. It's essentially the same amount of students and focus. And I feel disappointed by that. I think that we should be aiming to bring back more students in the lower tiers. And I just do want to be able to say that for the record. I feel like this is something our community needs, and it's something our students also very much need. So that's the only comment I want to make.
May I respond through the chair?
Yes.
Yes. What we will do, Trustee Polito, is definitely report back in 2 weeks how the small group cohorts, I want to say reopening, but it's no longer defined as a reopening, how the small group cohort with TK and the unique learners is going. Because we do have other teachers who are willing to come back in the urgent learners group, and we could potentially have other classrooms that would fall under the small group cohort. But again, per our previous conversation, we would bring back a report to the board and get direction to be able to continue bringing more teachers and students on campus for in-person learning if the conditions, well, not if the conditions improve, but if we are able to roll out successfully this plan.
Thank you. We'll move to public comment.
Through the chair, I had something also that I wanted to ask Superintendent Sudaria. So Gina, to clarify, if we're going to roll this out with our TK class and our unique learners, and then start looking at kindergarten and 1st grade teachers who want to return and students who want to return, and as it rolls out, then you'll come back to the board after those first 2 cohorts, the unique learners and the TK class. come back to us, and then we'll talk more about what the plan is for the rest of the students.
Yes, just like we did with the learning hubs, we will bring it to the board, make sure, we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed, reassure the board that we are following safety protocols, and as well as the measure, safety measures before we make any unilateral decision to bring more teachers on campus.
Thank you. Then I'll save my other questions for when that happens.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the board? So we will move to public comment.
So we have one person, Miss Rhonda White, and I have promoted you to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Rhonda White, president of RTA. I just want to say thank you to Superintendent Sudaria and the members of cabinet, as well as the extended members of the Ravenswood City School District who have been on the reopening committee. It has been a long and tedious process. We've exhausted a lot of things, but distance learning is hard, but I believe we are learning a lot of good things. And even though it may be a very small number of students and staff that are coming back initially, it gives us the opportunity for us to make sure that we are making the right moves and that we are staying on top of things. And so I am hopeful that as we move forward and hopefully come out of purple and orange and red, or however that goes, that we take this opportunity to really figure out how we learn from the pods, the hubs, the small groups, the cohorts, whatever the terminology is at the time, because education as we once know it is no more. And so even when we come back, it will look very differently from what it was. So once again, I want to thank the Ravenswood City School Districts for working so closely with the unions to make sure that our students and staff are safe, but also continuing to put in time into distance learning and how the teachers are teaching and how the students are learning so that we may get the most out of this time. Thank you.
And through the chair, there are no other speakers.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for 8B, consideration to approve the proposal to bring urgent learners to campus for in-person instruction.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 8B.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shibomahi,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Because I believe this does not sufficiently meet the needs of the community, I'm going to vote no.
Trustee Bloom,
Aye.
The motion carries 4-1 with Trustee Polito opposing. We will go to item 8C.
thank you. Yes, I will be presenting. Can you hear me? I'll be presenting on item 8C, the consultant contract with Roy Advisors, LLC, to coordinate strategic pandemic response efforts. I will be giving some context and then also provide an update of the responses that we've made to the board input from our proposal that we brought to the board back in November 19th, 2020. So we approved the plan, the Ravenswood City School District approved the strategic plan in early 2020 that laid out a bold vision and a roadmap to transform the district over the next several years. Despite the COVID pandemic, we believe that the vision and priorities in our strategic plan remain as relevant and essential as ever, although the conditions in our community has changed dramatically. We need to advance our strategic priorities despite these unprecedented circumstances. And like you heard, President of RTA, Rhonda White, mentioned, we are really still focusing on the rigor of instruction, trying to improve the remote learning that all of our students are receiving at this time, since we have not launched the in-person learning. We also need to consider additional initiatives around COVID that have taken priority as we adapt the new health and safety constraints on how we serve students in the pandemic environment. And so to ensure we advance our strategic priorities despite the unprecedented circumstances, the district proposes a contract with Ann Waterman Roy to support the district to coordinate strategic pandemic response efforts. I would like to go over a few slides to review the direction the board gave staff in response to the presentation we made on November 19th. So staff were directed to modify the contract to reflect the following 3 areas: define the explicit duties related to COVID-19, define the terms and total amount of the contract, and then define the funding source. So addressing the duties related to COVID-19, I hope you had a chance to take a look at the proposal. Ann Waterman Roy will support the district again to coordinate strategic pandemic response efforts. And during the month now through March, we believe her foci will be on these following priorities, which is back to school campus planning, the school improvement working group, supporting the monthly school improvement working group and weekly steering committee meetings. That's also including proposing agendas and following up as needed to ensure a school improvement working group can make informed, thoughtful recommendations to the board around bringing and supporting more students on campus. Communication that has to happen around bringing back students onto campus, and then the coordination internally and externally to ensure a safe and smooth return to campus for urgent learners. There's need to develop and project manage a plan to implement a rapid antigen testing pilot program that Ravenswood, Redwood City, and Alejandro Pescadero are privileged to be able to launch. And then obviously so that we can advocate for ourselves and more importantly, educate our community as an institution that is to inform people with facts, we want to be able to develop and manage a plan to proactively advocate for COVID vaccination to encourage educators and students to return to campus for in-person instruction. Additionally, the duties will include also around the strategic plan to develop and coordinate an engagement process that informs the superintendent and cabinet in order to support them to update the strategic initiatives in the context of COVID. And then there is constant information being released as it becomes updated. And so she will serve as the district's strategic COVID response lead, including staying up to speed on new information and disseminating the information as needed throughout the district to ensure we're operating in alignment with the latest requirements and guidance, and coordinating strategic responses as issues or opportunities arise. So that might look like review and create changes and oversight for the COVID-19 related sections of the Safe Schools program, assist in preparing and issuing COVID-19 related reports to district administration and county and state and the federal agencies, and in collaboration with cabinet, prepare and maintain manuals, procedures, reports, and files related to COVID-19. And of course, there's going to be other supports that will probably be needed as COVID pandemic continues, and especially as we try to mitigate any, or try to increase learning acceleration as we want to address the widening gap between achievement and opportunity. The third item, or the second item, I should say, that was a request of the board for us to define more thoroughly was the contract amount and the terms, right? So the contract shall be between January and December of this year, 2021. The initial proposal's hourly rate was $150 an hour, which is a competitive hourly rate with other experienced strategic education consultants, and did agree to reduce her rate to $125 an hour for this project. We reduced the scope of the number of hours per week that we will have her work, and that's 20 hours per week. And I will, as a superintendent, determine the scope and the number of hours per week, which is also the request of the board last time, is to have more direction and say. And then there was also a request of the board to provide a cap in terms of the number of hours and also the maximum payment. And so the maximum number of hours is 960 hours, and the maximum total payment is $120,000. And in regards to the term, I want to highlight here, which was not clearly stated in the last contract, that the district at any time may terminate this agreement in whole or in part by giving a written notice specifying the date and scope of the termination. So this contract will have no financial impact on the district's general budget, ref funds, nor federal grants and COVID funds. So new funding from a grant the district pursued is restricted for the purpose of coordinating the strategic pandemic response efforts. The entire cost of the contract will be covered by new money, and the approval of the grant has not been made official, but is very promising. We received word that the process is running up the flagpole and will be formalized in 2 weeks. I also wanted to highlight that Redwood City is also another district that was privileged to be able to pursue the same grant unique to our district to fund their conditions of COVID, to fund their coordination of COVID efforts as well. And so our recommendation is for the board to approve the consultant contract between the district and Roy Advisors LLC to coordinate the strategic pandemic response efforts.
So now I will open the floor for comment from the board.
Through the chair.
Trustee Polito.
Yes, thank you.
Would you like me to stop sharing?
Oh, yes, that's fine. Over here. So I have a couple questions. One, when I look at the contract and it says proposed scope of work, it's January through March 2021, but this contract is for January to December, but the scope of work is only defined from January to March.
So the foci will be those key items through January through March. They most likely will extend, especially if we're looking at vaccination plans and what have you. But then there's also more scope of work that the consultant will be able to pursue outside of these areas. But this is her primary role.
I understand, but when I think about COVID support, we're looking for COVID support all the way through December. I mean, I know that we don't know if we're going to return this semester.
Yeah.
I think people are projecting by the next school year, we'll be in a very different space, especially as vaccinations are rolling out already. So the bulk of her work is around COVID, but we're not necessarily expecting to remain with COVID set of facts or, restrictions or whatever for the entire year.
Absolutely. I just want to emphasize that we are focusing on these because these are the areas of most urgency that we must have her focus on these items between these months.
So a lot of the work also listed here is work that's already happening. So she's going to help alleviate staff from the work they're already doing. Because, for example, she's helping the working group, like setting agendas. The working groups are already meeting, are already setting agendas, right? Or communication. Yeah. So let me just go through them. So, and then communication's already happening, right? So is she alleviating staff that are already currently doing this work?
She's actually supporting us with doing this work.
Oh, she's been supporting you with doing
She's able to support pro bono right now doing this work.
Okay, so she's already been involved, been helping.
Correct.
We're trying to just formalize a contract for, okay.
Yes.
I'm glad to see that you took the feedback from the board the last time. I know there was a lot of concern in every single area that you can possibly think of. It seems like you've been able to work through some of that feedback. Like, to your point, you develop more detail around what she's going to do and brought down the pricing because it was a lot. And the other component was funding. We didn't want to use ref money because we feel that ref money, especially in relation to COVID, should be saved and used for student and teacher needs, especially not knowing how long we're going to continue operating the way we have. You're talking about other funding being sought out, and I think that's great. What I'm concerned about is being asked to approve something prior to receiving approval of grant money. I'm glad that you have indicators telling you that we're likely to receive the money, but we don't have a confirmation that we will. So then that makes me go to a place of uncertainty because I think about the liability we will incur if for some reason those initial positive comments and feedback don't have a follow through. I've seen a little bit of everything happen in this world of finance and money. And I would think that we would be able to look at this type of contract until we know that the money is secured, which would be at our next meeting. So those are some of my just immediate responses to what we're looking at. When I see one of her roles, develop and project manage a plan to proactively advocate for COVID vaccinations. I would love if we would add proactively engage in a plan to bring kids back to our schools. Like, that to me is when the money starts making sense of why we have somebody. Like, if you had her coming on board to develop a strategic plan, how to bring students back into Ravenswood to raise that enrollment, like, that is the type of work that I would like to see from a consultant like this, rather than just temporary COVID conversations. And then after that, it's really about, looking at our strategic plan, which I know we need support with. It still feels a little light for me, the scope of work. So I still have my reservations on this, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Trustee Polito. Through the chair.
Yes, Superintendent.
Yeah, we definitely believe that there can also be extended work through the summer, especially when we're looking at the learning loss mitigation plan. But that can also, what you preference or what you mentioned about in terms of recruiting and bringing more students. And Waterman does have the skill sets in terms of strategic project management and strategic planning to be able to do that.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that written in as a primary focus and goal for me to feel more like, okay, this is the type of scope of work that we really need support for, not just this like immediate COVID related situation. So, but thank you for clarifying that she has that type of skill. I don't know if we're gonna reel her in to do anything like that, but that was just
per direction of the superintendent.
Through the chair, I think, sorry, I think you said okay. So one thing that I do want to just say is, as a board, we also need to be thinking about the vaccination schedule. So even though like the vaccination schedule hasn't been set for children yet, right? So our teachers and our staff can be vaccinated, but our kids will not be vaccinated yet because that has not gone through the whole process of being approved by the FDA. They're still in process of testing to see if that works, right? So if we're thinking about the study overall, so there will be some type of COVID necessary things that need to happen in the fall, even when kids come back, even if we're in a different place with COVID-19, even if we're in a different place with vaccines will not be happening with kids yet. So we still need to think about these protocols of social distancing, of masks, of mask wearing and stuff, just because that's going to keep kids and families the most safe. So I do think that there is going to be COVID support and work that's going to be needed in the fall. The other thing I do want to say is I think that when we're thinking about accepting this contract, I think that it's okay because we also have written in here that we can end it at any point. right? So if for some reason in the next 2 weeks our funding source doesn't come through, we have every right to end it in 2 weeks. So I think that this is something that we need. She's clearly doing work that's pro bono for us right now, and with the intention of wanting to help our district. So I think that we also need to consider in good faith, this is a person who has been committed to our district for, I'm sure for a few years, because she was also here when to help with the merging of schools, I believe, but from a different perspective and a different role. So I think as a district, we need to think about who are those people who have the expertise, and are we willing to invest in them? And especially if we already know REF is planning on helping with that, even if this district funding or the county funding doesn't come through, I think that this is worth it for our kids and for our community to invest REF funds in, because this directly ends up affecting our kids in our community. And I also want to say, you know, that rate is very low for a consultant. And for her to do that, that shows even more good faith and desire to invest in our community, in my opinion, working on the education side, on the private sector side. That is a very low rate. And so the fact that we have all of these things that have come back, that, you know, that we heard from the superintendent, that it's now, you know, according to what Gina or what Superintendent Sedaria sees is necessary for our continued growth and success in our district. I also think, you know, the 2D, I guess, to the proposed scope of work, I do feel like those last two items do address that, you know, need. If we are trying to increase enrollment, like that is something that she will be helping with the research, data gathering, analysis, and synthesis to help us with decision making. Because at the end of the day, we have to still go out, right? Our community, our district still has to go out and help with that process, but she can help and give us the tools for that process. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Through the chair.
Priscilla.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to, you know, express that what Trustee Bloom said is I agree with everything that you said there. Trustee Polito, I also agree with the uncertainty of knowing the funding source. And, but I don't want to delay action if we don't have to. If we can do a consent on the contingency that the plan, that the funding is there, is what I'm thinking. Because I understand that, yes, we can cancel it at any time. However, making that commitment when we don't have the funding in hand is a concern that I have also. So I'd like it to be contingent on that, but I don't want to delay the process of getting Ms. Roy on board. Again, more.
Through the chair, so Superintendent Sudaria, is that a possibility for us to approve contingent upon the funding source is approved?
Yes, it is. I through the chair.
Yes.
Right. I would like to, if that gets the support of the board, knowing that it will create a reassurance. I mean, I do want to let you know that the foundation, our foundation, the Ravenswood Education Foundation, does have the means to be able to support as well, but heeding to, you know, direction of some of the board members from November, that was an area that we needed to resolve and consider other options. But it is possible, yes, I'm open to approving the contract contingent of the approval of the grant.
Right, that's really for the board to determine if that's kind of the clause they want to make with the approval. So if there's enough board support for that, then we can definitely make a motion with that language added.
Through the chair, I also just want to push back one more time to say, I am fine with this contract, whether it's through the grant money or through REF funds. because I think that this will directly positively affect our community and our students. And I think that we need to invest in that. And I'm willing to say yes to that, whether it's grant or ref, especially because the rate went down and we have the ability to cancel this or terminate this contract if we need to.
Through the chair, I don't think I really understand the implications of the money coming from ref, meaning like how much we have from ref, what that's allocated for, if we approve this, like what's that taking it away from? So it's difficult to say. I just don't feel like I have enough information to say, yes, it's from ref, but yes, I do support the position. I think it would be best, it would be great if we could get their approval too. So I'm all for the contingent upon the grant approval. I don't know, again, I don't have enough information to go the other way, like if you take it from ref.
I will attempt, and then Will, if you have a little bit more background or concrete numbers, I would appreciate input if you do have that on hand. But there were specific dollars raised by donors who committed to giving to ref to allow the district to respond to the needs that we have in response to COVID.
So through the chair, if I understand correctly what you're saying, there is money in already allocated towards COVID response for this position or for other things, other programs, other supplies.
Will, do you mind responding with more concrete response if possible?
Yeah, I haven't read the terms of the specific grant agreement here, but I believe that this is similar to another grant that came in a little while ago where we didn't have the grant sort of formalized and documents signed before the board approved the partnership. Specifically, that was actually with street code. Similarly here, I think the grant is in its sort of final stages, and I think as Gina mentioned, sort of directly for this position.
Right, and then going back to an earlier point, if people are really seeing this extend all the way into fall, that's another reason why I don't want to rely on ref funding, COVID funding, in case this continues to extend and have other effects that we will need financial support for. So this is why the board, the majority of the board at the last time we saw this, we said other funding other than ref. We felt like it would be better allocated for all of the matters related to COVID. And part of you bringing it back was that you sought new funding. You found something that would allow us to bring this type of role on with new money. So that's why we're back here again, only a few months after we voted on it, because it did change the circumstances of the contract.
Well, through the chair, I can clarify a little bit more.
Yes, Superintendent.
Right, the maximum amount for this entire contract through the fall of next year to December 31, 2021 is $120,000 total. So to clarify, Will, donors gave money to ref under COVID, an auspice of COVID, so that we could utilize and respond in the best strategic way possible. Those dollars aren't necessarily earmarked for a specific role, specific materials. That's the discretion of staff. Is that, if I'm speaking correctly? And if not,
I think you may be conflating two different funds. And again, I'm not ref's accountant here, but sort of through my conversations with them, they do have a ref emergency fund, which is designed to support and collect donations to address the pandemic. So for example, when we purchased laptops, that was through that emergency fund. There's a separate donor who I believe made a large donation to help actually with the specific coordination of testing and other sort of pieces to the strategic response. And that donation, I think, is what we would plan on using to fund this particular position. But as Gina's also mentioning, the funds are moving into ref, and then they come to the district sort of through that. So, we're not necessarily receiving money directly from the donor here.
Through the chair, so that money you say that was specifically given by an individual for anything related to testing, how much was that money? Like how much was that?
I'm not sure I should be speaking of the specifics of the grant, but it was in sort of the $200,000 range.
I don't need to know the name. I just want to know how much was allocated for that.
And more just because we haven't finalized the terms of the grant, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Oh, you're talking about the new new grant.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's clarify that. So that second money that's coming in through REF is the new grant that Superintendent Sidari was talking about that we haven't heard back from yet. That is a $200,000 grant, the one that we're discussing tonight. That
and just to clarify slightly there, we have heard back. We just haven't finalized the terms, if that makes sense. So it's not signed, but it's not like we submitted an application or fingers crossed over here.
Right.
It's further along. It's much further along.
If I may, I think we have a representative from REF. So if they, if we could pass them over just in case they can answer some of the questions that we're bringing up.
So through the chair, I will promote Renu Nanda.
Thank you.
And Renu, you should be able to speak.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think what Will said is right. There's this outside donor that Superintendent Sudaria referenced that hasn't finalized the grant, but it looks highly likely for this COVID response, just to push us in getting kids back on campus and doing everything we need to do. And then going to Trustee Bloom's point, if that falls through, REF is happy to step in and fund the same thing. And addressing Trustee Polito's point, that would not take away from any other funds for kids, because this is a big priority for us and we could find additional funding for this. We know how important it is. So does that help clarify?
Thank you. If I may, thank you everyone for sharing. I feel like it kind of comes down to, the role that she's going to be playing and what our needs are. I think we are going into an area of unknown, and we've been kind of in the unknown when operating under COVID. And we definitely need a specific person that we can go to answer a lot of these COVID related things that we want, which is, for me, I see it as, bringing students back. If we want to increase that, we need someone that's going to not only be tackling a lot of the COVID tests and the COVID vaccines and strategic planning, but in number one, it's just back to campus planning. And so kind of hearing more about funding, I get the contingency, but I think for me, it's one of those one-time types of situations where, if the money is going to be there and we do have a backup plan, I kind of feel comfortable moving forward.
Through the chair.
Trustee Polito.
So one of her responsibilities, scope of work, was in relation to knowing the latest things that are happening with COVID and kind of like any changes, regulations, modifications. So I know that County Superintendent McGee has, I think, either weekly or every other week meetings with all the superintendents of San Mateo County to give information before it's even released to the public. And she's letting superintendents know ahead of time what changes are coming down the pipeline, what do you have to prepare for. So does that mean that this person is going to be going to these meetings in your place? Because that's really where the bulk of information comes through before it even hits like the newspapers. It's coming through internal educational, channels. Yeah. How would that work?
Nancy McGee does get the information. Superintendent Nancy McGee from the county does get the information. I am to participate in those meetings. I participate in those meetings on a regular basis. There's actually a superintendent county meeting that's facilitated by superintendents tomorrow, which is about 4 hours that I will be in attendance. I do not see her being a designee when I need to be at these specific meetings as a superintendent. The information that we received, there are some memos. There is also it's more of a briefing than detailed. And we have an opportunity to ask questions, but then we are responsible to go back, look up the information further. And I would actually appreciate Anne in this role to not only deep dive, but then take the time to debrief, put it in deck form, be able to present to staff as well. But I am responsible for also knowing information to the depth of my ability.
Got it. And then I think my follow-up question was, it just slipped my mind. So never mind.
Well, for example, there were 2 meetings this evening. There was one meeting at 4 o'clock, Pathways to Recovery webinar, and that is to brainstorm and share ideas with staff about thinking outside the box in terms of how we're going to deliver instruction 5 years from now so we can close the achievement gap. The second meeting that was right after that was a town hall around vaccination update. She attended both of those meetings. As I and staff were facilitating, for example, student services and curriculum and instruction, special education director and myself were in attendance, facilitating a professional development with principals and coordinators from each of those 3 departments to improve the instructional core of our remote learning.
Thank you. And that actually the follow-up question I had. Is she exclusively working with Ravenswood under this agreement, or are we one of her many potential clients?
I'm not sure of her other clients, but she is exiting Innovate early this winter. But I do not know.
I'm sorry,
her
can
other
you repeat
clients.
that last sentence?
She is currently
You said she's also working.
She's transitioning from Innovate and exiting this winter.
In respect to time, I'm going to open the floor to the public for public comment.
Through the chair, we have Miss White. And I am allowing you to talk, Miss White. And
Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief. The last time this contract was brought to us, I had several issues with it. And so I decided to just dig a little deeper into some amounts. And so our project manager for facilities makes $198 an hour. She works 40 hours per week. We had a retired staff member who helped us clean up business services. He was making $100 an hour. We have a paralegal who works with the district. They make $135 an hour. And we have county counsel who makes $245. So I am happy to see that Anne is no longer making $150 and has agreed to reduce her amount to $125. I disagree with Jenny that is low for maybe the job, but it is indicative of everyone in Ravenswood City School District makes much less than what their skill set is and what they're worth. The one thing I am concerned with is that, or let me rephrase that. I was excited to know that this money was coming from a grant and not from REF. I understand that REF is willing to raise more funds to fund this position because it is important to us. However, I would like to keep REF funds going directly to students, to staff, to materials, and to other needs. So that's just my comment as the president of the Ravenswood City School District, the Teachers Association. Sorry, everyone, it's late. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments from the public, so I will entertain a motion.
Through the chair, are we making a motion on how the recommendation is currently presented, or is it based on contingent of the grant? I just wanted to make sure we were clear.
I would say gauge the board and see how many people want the contingency of the grant being approved. I know Trustee Bloom and Trustee Latu had said that they were okay proceeding as is, and I think the three of us were concerned, but there's obviously been a discussion in between. So I think it'd be good to revisit and see if the board still would like an approval based on the approval of the grant that was applied for.
Through the chair, I don't think it's necessary to have that contingency in place now. It looks like that the funding will be guaranteed either way, and that it won't come from any funds that will be or could be earmarked for students in the future.
Well, then you have the majority of the board comfortable voting as is, so you can entertain a motion.
So I will entertain a motion as is to approve the consulting contract for 8C. Do you want me to read the whole? No.
I will make a motion to approve.
A second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shubomihi,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom,
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
I will say Superintendent Sidaria is just glaring at me like, give me your eye. I don't want to know. What happens, Trustee Shubomi?
I said the suspense. The suspense.
I think about numbers a lot, maybe because I had a bachelor's in business, and I'm always like, I feel like it's not over till like it's confirmed. I did build some confidence with, I think it was Will that said, you know, basically this, we're guaranteed this money. But then it's all hearsay at this point. See, now he's like shaking his head like he's not sure. So it's already approved. So I'm just gonna vote no for the sake of, I want to secure money before I vote on contracts that are related to money. So I'm gonna say no because I already know it's approved. If it was more on the edge, maybe I'd reconsider, but thank you.
The motion carries 4-1 with Trustee Polito opposing. And so we will move on to 8D.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So item 8D, we've seen this before. So all school districts are required to adopt a complaint procedure to include complaints regarding instructional materials, facilities, and teacher misassignments and vacancies. And a notice must be posted in every classroom informing the public of the textbook sufficiency standard and the facility standard and the availability of the complaint form. So the procedures must establish where to file the complaint, who's responsible for the resolution, the time allowed for the resolution of the complaint. And the Williams complaint form can be found at all of the sites and on the district website under Human Resources. Good news, there were no complaints filed, and so we meet that criteria during the second quarter, October 1 through December 31st, 2020. And that's just information.
Thank you. So we'll move on to 9. And so I'll pass this to Director Jennifer. Oh, she's not here.
Good evening, President Latu, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Sidaria. I am here to present about significant disproportionality. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I could get a thumbs up if you can see. Can you see it now? Awesome. So In education, we really like alphabet soup. So this process is called CSACE, and CSACE stands for Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervention Services Plan. And basically what that is the state looks at if we are disproportionate in any particular area in special education. In the next slide, you'll see the particular areas that this state looks at. They look at identification overall, identification by ethnicity, identification by eligibility category, placement, or disciplinary referrals. We are considered significantly disproportionate in one area. The one area for us is African American and other health impairment. So we are considered disproportionate in identifying students for special education who are African American in that one specific category, not in any other areas. OHI is a really huge category. It encompasses so much, and I listed them out here. They're things like attention deficit disorder, diabetes, epilepsy, leukemia. And I'd like to point out the bottom portion, which is highlighted, and it says adversely affects a child's educational performance. Just because a student has a health impairment, it does not mean that they need an IEP. For a practical example, President Biden would have had an IEP. He had a stutter. He clearly does not need an IEP. He's the president of the United States. Additionally, Amanda Gorman, the poet laureate who recited her poem yesterday, has an auditory processing issue and couldn't say the letter R until 2 years ago after reciting Aaron Burr's Sir of Hamilton, and that's how she learned to get her R's. I say all of this because we have to educate our staff, our community, that just because a kid has some health issue, it doesn't mean that it's adversely affecting their academic performance. So here are the numbers. So we have 23 students who are African American who have an IEP. Of those 23, 6 of them are under OHI. And because 6 out of 23 is 25%, it's such a large number of that particular category, and that's why it's an issue. What I can say is that we are trending down. 3 years ago, it was 12. Last year, it was 9. This year, it's 6. I have the very unfortunate news to tell you that I learned last week that we were in CSACE last year, but we're in again this year, so we get to write another plan this year because the state does enjoy this. Some of the decrease is because students are matriculating to high school. I wanted to give a little overview of student qualifying information. I have a dog issue. I'm pretty sure that you're all hearing that. It's I want attention time. This is distance learning, friends. All right, so this is what our families are dealing with, what our teachers are dealing with. Nonetheless, we press on. So these 6 students, I wanted to kind of give a profile, a general profile, because we have to dig into the root cause analysis so that we can identify the underlying trends so we can make a change. 2 of our students have a medical diagnosis that is something other than ADHD. 4 of the students are under OHI for ADHD. Some other noteworthy information is 2 students are in foster care and 2 students suffer significant abuse. That's really important to note because oftentimes trauma gets misdiagnosed as ADHD, and then you're trying to attack the issue of ADHD and you're not addressing the correct underlying issue. The ages these particular students entered special education are listed here, and it's an average age of 5.6 years old, so very young. So we had to dig into this data, and we had several meetings. Our DAC-DLAC meetings, we've gone over this data, our admin team, our cabinet team, collaboration team. We've also had collaborative meetings with Sequoia Union High School District because we share students in common, trying to tackle the underlying issues. And we looked at the files of each student and did a deep dive with the data. because our issue isn't that there's these particular 6 students, it's that there's a discrepancy, so we want to prevent this from happening in the future. So as a team, we identified these 3 underlying causes. Early intervention not having been in place, because if a student is going straight to an IEP at 3 years old, our guess is there wasn't a lot of underlying intervention at that point. Early academic and behavior intervention needing to be implemented, meaning an SST, a 504, that type of thing to help mitigate these issues. We also feel as though we needed anti-racist and bias training because we need to honor different cultures that value movement and verbal language skills and not misidentify ADHD as a family that's just active and verbal. Part of this process that the state assigns to us is that we have to identify a target group to watch to see if we are making a positive impact with our interventions. And the target group we would like to look at is kindergarten through 4th grade students who've been referred to an SST, catching those students really early, putting in place interventions, supporting their teachers, and looking to see if we can solve things or support students there before they need an IEP. If they need an IEP, they should get an IEP, but that's something that we need to consider. So the 2 outcomes that we set for ourselves is that we will have follow-up meetings 6 weeks after the initial meeting, the initial SST meeting, which will include specific data-based interventions and data tracking to measure those interventions to see if they're making a change. And the second outcome is we want to support our teachers having anti-bias training so that they're culturally aware of our students. As with everything, there's always a fiscal impact, and this one has been a really challenging for me to wrap my head around. So CSACE is not a special education situation. It is a whole district-wide situation that we have to look at. So what CSACE mandates is that we take part of the special education budget and we spend it on general education activities to prevent students from entering into special education if they don't need it. So the fiscal impact here is approximately 92,000 of our dollars moving from special education to working specifically on our CSACE plan. And it looks at allocation 3310 and 3315 and pulling off 15% of that to reallocate that money to support these particular students that we've identified. So you may be thinking, okay, so what are you going to do differently? So the things that we're going to do differently are looking at having small group instructors for our elementary school. We currently have those at the middle school, but adding small group instructors to our elementary school, as well as a series of anti-racist workshops, including lessons and speakers that's really full blown and not just like you go and then you learn and then you're done. We really want to be thoughtful about that training. That's a very brief overview of what CSACE is and really why it's important, because it's not about that the number 6 is low. It's about the idea that whenever there's a discrepancy, we need to really look into that and identify the underlying root causes so that we can make a change and make a shift. So I'd like to open it up to everybody if you have any questions.
I don't think we have any questions. I will open the floor for discussion from the board. I don't think we have any comments, so I will also open it up to the public comment, and I see a hand.
We have Sharifa Wilson. So Ms. Wilson, I have promoted you so you can talk.
Hi, everyone.
So, Wilson, I've missed you.
So, thank you for this opportunity. So I have a question.
Yeah.
So looking at your measurable outcomes, what impact will it have on the students?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. So our theory is that if we have students who have an SST and we put in data-based interventions early, that they may not need an IEP and therefore will be in their general ed classes all day and not miss out on any instruction. Because anytime you have a student with an IEP, you do pull them out of the general education environment. We'd like to intervene early and provide supports for them to know their own learning and know their own learning styles, so they may not need that extra support. If they need it, they need it. But the idea is to intervene early.
Yeah, so you said bring on 3 small group instructors. So are those children going to be able to be part of that small group instruction?
Yeah,
Okay.
pending approval from the state, because we had to turn it in, and whether they say yes or no or not. But my idea currently is we have these 3 small group instructors who could work with the teachers who have students who have SSTs. Then you could have the small group instructor work with your high students, while the teacher then has time to work with the students that are lower. And so it's just a different way of thinking about intervention. You don't necessarily have to have a small group instructor work with your lows. They can work with your highs, while you have the expertise of the teacher working with kids who need some sort of special.
And then just one more question. How many total African-American students are there in the district?
I knew somebody was going to ask that, and I meant to have my data up on my left-hand side, and I'm going to pull it up. Give me 2 seconds. Well, maybe more than 2.
Because, you know, comparing 23, it depends on what the larger group is.
Right.
Sorry, but.
Don't be sorry. I knew that was a question, and I knew I needed to pull up my data, and you know what? I didn't. So you always keep me on my toes. I was going to say Trustee Wilson, but
sorry.
Maybe you'll just still be trusted.
Rob, a big round for you. Let's see, you had 24,000 early on. You had 20,000 plus in this round, and we add everything up.
Good to see yourself.
So the total is 116.
Ah, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If we don't have any more comment.
I have a question through the chair.
Yes, Trustee Alexander.
So Ms. Gravum, the 3 small group instructors, are you talking about hiring 3 additional certificated teachers? Would it be part-time, full-time? I'm assuming for elementary school, that means 1 at each of the elementary school sites. In that case, will the one going to Los Robles also be bilingual? And at Los Robles, will that person be doing primary language instruction at those grades for those students?
My ideal, oh, sorry.
So, and then, is it gonna be more like what the TOSAs were doing back in the day?
A little bit different. In my ideal world, all 3 would be bilingual because that reflects our community more accurately. So always a hope to aim that way. And the small group instructors would look more like what is at our middle school currently, which is looking at our after school providers like our Boys and Girls Club and having them work for us during the day as well as the afternoon. Then it blends and the after school program teachers see what's happening during the day and then can provide that support directly to the teachers while also learning teaching strategies when they're in the classroom under the support of the principal and the teacher directly. But also, like I said, they can be working with the highs while the credentialed teacher is working with the students who need more support.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
If we have no more comments, we can move on to 10A.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So I'll pass it to Director Lara Brennan.
Good evening, everyone. I am presenting for your approval this evening the school accountability report cards. So state law requires that schools receiving state funding prepare and distribute a school accountability report card. The purpose is to provide parents in the community with important information about each school, including reporting on school and district data aligned to the state priorities. Are there any questions that I can answer about the SARCs?
So I will open the floor to the board if there's any questions or comments. I see none. I'll also open the floor for public comment. And there's none. So I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve item 10A.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shibomahi,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito, Trustee Bloom.
Aye. Sorry.
And the motion carries 5-0. Sorry, Anna, I didn't hear you. It was aye, right? So the motion carries 5-0. And we will move on to 11A. And I will pass this to Director Tony Stone.
Thank you, President Latu. The item before you is the recommendation to approve the employment and assignment of Caroline Morales as a preschool special education teacher on the basis of a waiver. And the waiver is for her basic skills requirement. Due to COVID-19, she's not been able to take the CBEST yet. She has it scheduled for the end of this month. So the waiver would allow her to serve our students in the interim. In spring of this year, she'll be eligible for her intern education specialist credential with an early childhood authorization. She has completed 18 upper division semester units through Brandman University. And she's pursuing her Master of Arts in Teaching as well as her preliminary credential. And previously, she served as a preschool paraeducator.
Do we have any comment from the board? None? Do we have any public comment? None, so I will entertain a motion.
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve item 11A.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shibomahi,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0. So we will move on to 12A, and I will pass this along to Will Eager.
Good evening, trustees. Two items before you. The first is the first lease amendment with the primary school. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. And just a quick refresher, I won't sort of flash the slides up again. I know you saw them last time. The primary school is doing a large amount of investment on their site, a lot of maintenance, a lot of improvements, and there's sort of two goals from this amendment. Three goals of this amendment. One is to just clarify what they're doing, what they're not doing, just sort of informally sort of note that. The second goal is there are a couple of portables that the primary school wants to make clear are not necessarily in the best shape, and that the district will not, at some point down the road, tell the primary school that they cannot use those as classrooms at our sole discretion. Those are the sort of two main purposes. I think I said three, and I had maybe one in mind that I may have forgotten briefly. When we spoke last, there were a couple of pieces of helpful feedback that we've incorporated into the contract. The first is clarifying, I think, to Trustee Spomane's questions of, exactly what are we on the hook for in the, I think, unlikely event that the district says you can't use these portables because of whatever reason we may designate. And that is now in Appendix B. The other sort of change that we made is more, I think, of a clarification, and that would be sort of adding section 5. We basically just called out that in the, when this agreement would basically go into effect. And this agreement would not go into effect if normal wear and tear on these portables caused them to not be usable, or if there was a fire that deemed them, some kind of act of God or force majeure, deemed them unusable, then the regular contract would apply. Trustee Bloom asked about this earlier, and so I actually sent her just a little bit of helpful context on what specifically that would entail. So if it does revert back to the initial contract, there's sort of two relevant parts. One is 10A, which says tenant at its cost shall maintain the property, so no cost to us. And 10D, which says landlord shall have no maintenance or repair obligations with respect to the property. So as long as we sort of do nothing here, we have no obligations to pay for anything or maintain the property per the initial lease. If though we are to say that they cannot use classrooms that we were using as classrooms, so we basically say, you know what, for our discretion, we say you can't use those classrooms, then those sort of discounts outlined in Appendix B would kick in. There's one other question that I think came up that I just want to answer, and then I will stop talking, around just the lifespan of those portables. So they were placed in the late 1990s or the early 2000s, right around sort of the turn of the millennium. Traditionally, portables have a 20-year lifespan, but I want to just be very clear. It doesn't mean that in 2025, the portables are going to collapse. It just means that they're more likely, similar to a used car, to need increased maintenance. So that could be, things like roofs, windows, things like that. I checked with our sort of facilities team, and I believe the oldest portable in the district was placed in 1990. So it's currently a little bit over 30 years old, and apparently is in great shape. And there's also been sort of talk of districts placing and still using portables from the 70s. So with good maintenance, with good routine care, portables can last quite a bit longer. We think, given the investments the primary school is making in these portables, we do believe that with what we know now, they're likely to make it to the end of the contract without any kind of other big major renovations being needed. Of course, if those renovations were needed, that would not trigger this lease amendment. That would fall under our existing lease, which says that tenant at its cost shall maintain the property. This is very sort of nuanced here, and I hope that makes sense. I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come up or I may not have addressed in the last minute or two.
I'll open the floor for questions or comments from the board.
To the chair.
Trustee Polito.
So can you remind me how many portables we have on the Brentwood campus?
Total, or that this amendment is referring to in particular? Might be the same number, actually. I think it's 9.
It should.
I think they're the same. I think all the portables are covered under this, but I believe the number is 9.
So we have 9 portables that are somewhat at their end of their lifespan traditionally, unless you do maintenance and you're taking care of them. So let's say worst case scenario, once again, going back to conservative money, worst case scenario, these 9 portables aren't usable in the next 5 years, maybe, or 5 to 10 years. There is a percentage, I think, that they allocated that they would decrease from rent based on not being able to use those. So how much money would that be in the worst case scenario that they cannot use these portables that are on the campus?
So in that case, where due to 5 years, natural wear and tear of the portables makes them unusable as deemed by the primary school, or as deemed by DSA, or as deemed by any third party, those portables would be entirely the responsibility of the primary school. So this amendment would not apply to that situation. That would be the, sort of section 5 here. If at some point during the term of the lease, so the next 10 years, any of the subject portables reach a condition where they are not able to be used for their intended purpose, i.e. as classrooms, due to ordinary wear and tear, then the parties will refer to the existing lease. So in that situation, Trustee Polito, we added that just to be hyper clear here. This amendment would not apply. And Trustee Bloom, thank you for clarifying that. That is correct. There are some portables on the site that are actually not included in this because they're part of the broader primary schools renovation plans.
Can you clarify really quickly that point you just made? I noticed you did not include Ravenswood. You said TPS, DSA, and someone
Yes.
else. You did not say
Yes.
Ravenswood.
Anyone other than us.
So
So
anyone
if-
other than us in the, yeah, just talking about normal wear and tear. But if we say this is normal wear and tear and you cannot use it, then
it's actually, it's meant to be more, Trustees, if we say, we don't want you to use those portables as classrooms because they're not, what'd you say?
Based on wear and tear?
I think it would be unlikely for us to flag that first, right? I think, you know, usually something else has happened to trigger. So for example, at Aspire right now, when we did our mold inspection, we found that some of the portables were not like up to code. That would not necessarily be included in this, right? That's not sort of normal course of life. So in that situation where if we found that the portables were not deemed to be safe due to sort of external standards, I think we would notify the primary school that, you know, hey, you're in violation of health code, right? It wouldn't be a, you know, hey, your window's looking a little leaky. You can't have students in there. What this is particularly trying to get at though, is because these portables were not, I want to be a little bit careful here just to make sure that we are not assuming any more responsibility than we may have, but the portables were not placed fully properly at the time that they were placed. This agreement is meant to prevent us from turning around and saying, hey, these portables that we had students in were not properly placed. You need to either properly place them or not use them at all as classrooms. And that's the only situation that we're
Okay.
talking
The
about.
only situation, so even the mold example would not apply here.
Not apply.
It would only be if we got involved and said this is not compliant, even though it was already they found the portables in this.
And that's where I want to be a
space.
little careful about attributing blame to the district. I think, you know, I'm not necessarily admitting that they are not compliant. I'm just saying that some have argued that they are not currently compliant.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think that was my biggest concern.
Totally. It's a little weird and it's a very nuanced point. I don't want to admit to any wrongdoing.
No, it was more like I know with us Aspire, we did run into an issue with a portable that was had mold in it and they couldn't use it anymore. So I'm thinking that could happen in this other scenario and what that would look like financially.
It could happen. In that case, that would not obligate the district to do any costs. And I would also just call the board's attention that this does not also obligate us to fix any individual problems, right? It obligates us to sort of work through it together, unless we say you can't use that kind of at our sole discretion, kind of without cause. Then what we do is we basically take the rent from those classrooms away. And basically what they're trying to prevent us from doing is shutting them down as a school, right? Okay. Saying you can rent this as a school, you just can't have any kids on site is kind of what they're trying to prevent us from doing.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Will.
Sure. Sorry, I know this is sort of complicated legalese here.
through the chair, Will, could you do the math for me or shall I? So I see the percentage in rent reduction. Can you do the math per, the total math per possible portable? Is that okay?
Yes, unlike Jen, I was not fully prepared with that question, but I believe the answer is 19.4%. And so just to clarify how we got to that number, each portable, we calculated the square footage of the total building area on the campus. And that's kind of a rough proxy of how many kids they could have in that space. And then we said, look, we're not just renting you the building area, we're also renting you the play space, the field areas, right? And so it's not like we would just do the proportion of the portable classrooms to the total classrooms. We then discounted that by sort of what we think the value is of the classrooms versus the play areas. And there was some negotiation back and forth with the primary school. The primary school saying, you know, I'm not trying to run a playground here, I'm trying to run a school. So what really matters to me is the classroom space. And I'm saying, well, you're not just renting the classrooms, you're renting the school. So we got to come up with sort of some kind of rate there. And that's what that 25% pro rata reduction is.
Thank you. I will open the floor to the public.
And through the chair, we have Miss Rhonda White. And so, Miss White, I have just promoted you to talk.
Good evening, everyone. I just have 3 questions. 1, what is the primary's rent? 2, what is the actual, Trustee Shabomahin got a percentage. I'd like to know what a portable would actually cost in physical dollars. And 3, what would happen if we took that clause out of the contract because we've already have a contract that is existing?
Sorry about that. The current year rent, I'm going a little bit off memory here, is approximately $1.3 million. So if you did sort of the 1.3 million times the 0.0193, that would be about $25,000 per portable. The reason that we did a percent here, not a dollar amount, is because over time the contract is scheduled to increase by about 2% a year. I think exactly 2% a year. And so the goal here was to have a percentage, thinking that that will show that change over time. I think that was your question, Ms. White. If your question was how much a portable costs, it's variable, but roughly around $100,000 if you're thinking about how much it would cost to replace that.
No, not the replacement. You gave it to me. I wanted to know what the percentage would be in actual dollars. And then the third question.
Yeah, so the third question, and just so I can understand the third question a little better, you're saying if we didn't have this amendment, what would happen here?
Correct.
This is an interesting amendment in that I don't really envision a situation where the district would ever take the first step to cause this to begin, right? So to some extent, I imagine that this amendment will hopefully never come into effect. And I fully expect that this amendment will never come into effect. So in a lot of ways, what we're trying to do here is be good partners to the primary school who's concerned about 2 things. One is they want to make sure that, we have agreed to per the terms of their initial contract, agreed to the terms of what their scope of work is. And they believe that since this is potentially complicated with DSA, given sort of the nature of these portables, that the project will be smoothly approved through DSA, which for those of you who don't know, is the Division of the State Architect, which approves all school buildings and hospitals. The second piece here is I think that they were a bit surprised to learn that we had that the portables were in the compliant state that they were in. And I think would like assurances from the district that we're not going to use their current state of compliance as a way to sabotage them in some capacity down the road. Does that answer your question, Ms. White?
Yes, it did. And it brought up another one. So then we are saying that they did not have all the information when they signed the contract then? First off, and second off, by signing this contract, we are then making a good faith effort to say that we will work with them.
On the first piece, I don't believe that we withheld any information, if that's the question. I think that both parties negotiated in good faith, and I think that they, I wasn't here, but I don't think there was any sort of malicious intent around withholding information from either party here. And then as to the second piece, I think we have a number of tenants across the district. At our facilities presentation a couple weeks ago, we highlighted all of the different organizations that lease from us. I think we try and be good partners with all of them to help them in making, in this case, massive investments into improving our campuses while still paying us, a fairly growing portion of our revenue. So I think we certainly don't want to go out of our ways to anyone any favors beyond that's what required in our rent. But we also want to make sure that the rental income is here for the long haul, and we're reasonably good partners here.
So then the new information about the portables came up later?
The new information about the portables came up when they were submitting their proposed plans for improving the site. So when they were sort of doing their investigative work for the site, that's when that information came up. First arose to my knowledge, and I believe to their knowledge. So I don't necessarily know what they did know and didn't know, and when they did or did not know it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I don't see any other speaker, so I will entertain a motion.
Through the chair, I have another question. So I just want to make sure this math is right. So it says there are 15 modular units. So 15, I'm assuming standard portables, no double-sized portables. So I'm just trying to do the math with the 25,000 times 15 and what that reduction in rent would be at the rate that we're getting now. Because then as the rate goes up, the reduction also will increase, right? The percentage of a higher number will.
Yes, and the just to be totally clear on what the rate, the percentage changes is it's each portable is that 24 by 40 divided by the total area of square footage on the site. So this does not include the main buildings and things like that, right? So that's why when you get to that, I think it was 25% or so. That's only of these 9 portables. That's sort of the max exposure we have, not the. And I believe it's 8 standard portables. I may actually do my math slightly wrong. I believe it's 8 standard portables and 1 double-sized portable. So I think it's actually going to be a little bit less than 25.
So, yeah, I just want to, sorry, through the chair, if you look at the agreement in B, it says then it's the 9 portables where, I'll just read this. The parties determined that documentation cannot be located for 9 portables to confirm these portables, subject portables. So it's only for the 9 subject portables that this clause would be in effect for. It would not be for the total 15.
Nor would it be for the main campus, the main buildings, anything in that area.
So it's only for those 9 where the documentation cannot be found. And only if we say, because the documentation can't be found, you guys can't be there. And if anyone else comes and says the documentation can't be found, you can't be there, then this clause does not come into play.
Well, it will, through the chair, come into play if they say it to us and then we have to do it. And then we go to TPS and say, you have to do it. So I get it that it's if we say it to TPS, if we pass the responsibility to TPS. But we could be held liable for this. Just making that point. I'm
not sure I understood your first point, Trustee Subcommittee. I think onto the second point about the board's liability, that is correct. I think the observation I made earlier on is that in balance, this is their investments in the site have greatly reduced the board's sort of overall liability here, right? So I think there is still some. We think it's fairly low. These portables are in good shape, but it is sort of lower than it was overall than before.
Thank you. If we don't have any other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I'm a move to approve item 12A.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shibomahine,
I'm still thinking, is that allowed? Can we skip me?
come back. I can. I can, yes. Trustee Alexander, or I'm sorry, Trustee Plato. Did you want to?
I was going to ask her if she needs more time to think about her personal decision, or does she have any follow-up questions that she wants to ask prior to making a decision?
I don't have, through the chair, I don't have any more questions. I just have some concerns, and so I just need more time. I just feel like I'm not ready to say one way or another, right? Yes or no. So not that I'm gonna have it in 20 seconds either, but so maybe I should just abstain. I don't know. So just skip me for the moment, because you might pass the vote without me anyway. So
Through the chair, can I still ask a question of Will?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
So, well, Will or Superintendent Sudaria, anybody who can answer the question, what is the likelihood of us saying to them, you can't use portable 3?
I personally cannot foresee a instance where I would want to do that, which I intoned to the primary school, and I think they were concerned that in 6 years there's a different administration with different priorities, and they're looking for some protection against that. I don't believe that down the road anybody would want to do that necessarily either, as it would seriously jeopardize sort of the revenue from the site. But I don't believe there's any material likelihood in the foreseeable future that this will go into effect.
All right, thank you.
Wait, yeah, and I concur, Trustee Alexander.
Through the chair, it actually raises another question for me. Because we're thinking about right now, but let's say the primary school decides to do some facility upgrades, right? That is when DSA is triggered. That's when DSA comes on campuses, and before something they had ignored, well, now they'll look at and say, this is not in compliance, you have to fix this, right? So it just kind of dawned on me, because I was like, okay, well, the likelihood is low, et cetera, et cetera. But if they're intending to make any changes that require DSA, this will become an issue for the board, or for whatever, the district as a whole, as far as their obligation in relation to these portables. Because once DSA gets involved, but the contract is saying if we say they can't use it, which means if DSA says they can't use it, we're still not liable. Is that correct?
That is correct. And just to that point, we also added a section, I just dropped it into the chat here, which reads, if the tenant elects to do renovations on these portables beyond what's described in Exhibit A. So if down the road, they need to replace that faulty window, right, per the base agreement. And in replacing that faulty window, that triggers a DSA process. As part of that broader renovation, they are required to either bring the portables into compliance with DSA or make them at least as compliant as they are now. So the idea here in my mind is I can't absolve the board of all liability for all of our sites at this time. My goal is to basically work to whittle it down. So any new improvements have to make us more compliant, right? And that's kind of what we're asking them to do here.
Through the chair. So, but my understanding, and I have limited understanding in this area, is that DSA would then be requiring the landlord, us, to do this. Like they would not just work around us and just only work with the primary school. It would be us as the landlord's responsibility.
In this case, because the tenant is the one doing most of the work. So for many of the renovations that they're proposing, the way our contract is structured is primary school hires an architect. The architect runs their plans in conjunction with the primary school. They bring it to us for sort of approval. We're, I think, fairly reasonable in working with them. We often provide suggestions, often saying, this may be an issue down the road, or this doesn't align with our broader vision for the site in rare cases. They then bring that to DSA. We often join that conference, but don't often speak up because we've already basically approved their plan to be brought to DSA. If DSA is to make suggestions or tweaks, that would all be done at the tenant's expense. And this is true for the folks that we sublet from. So this is true right now. All 5 is doing something similar. Aspire is doing something similar. Oh, excuse me, not Aspire. Aspire is the one where we're more involved. All 5, the primary school, Silicon Valley International Charter School, formerly Alto, is the other one where they're sort of in those processes with DSA, and they're constantly talking to DSA. We don't pay for that. We just approve that we sort of view, revise, and make comments on their plans before sort of approving them down the road. With Aspire and the KIP, we are responsible. So that actually is our sort of DSA process. We go through that in addition to our schools. In some cases, Aspire is also building a high school on their land. It's their own project, which we don't have much to do with. I may have muddied the waters there further than clarifying anything.
Through the chair. So because the water is muddy, my reservation in giving a vote is number one, this isn't an issue right now. And we have a contract, we have an MOU, we have an agreement. We don't have a threat of us doing something, of this board right now doing something. So it feels like for me, I just want to make sure I thoroughly understand every possibility before I amend the agreement, the contract. It feels like there is no big implication of for a yes right now at this moment. That's what it feels like. It feels like it's a good faith thing. And so with that, then I, and knowing myself and who I want to be, you know, as a steward in this, of the district, of this community, then I feel like I need more information because this isn't an urgent thing. Like my vote would be no right now, while I'm still trying to understand comprehensively. But
with respect to time and with just kind of a lot, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of question and discussion that still needs to be had. And so I'll bring it up to the board if they want to continue to vote on this, or if there is a possibility that we could table this for, I don't know, another month or so until we get until we feel more confident about the vote. But I that's just what I'm going to bring up to the board.
I think that this is a move for being a good faith landlord. And I also think number 4 in the beginning, the first paragraph actually addresses all of these issues. It says, the above provisions of this section 3 shall not apply if an agency besides the landlord, without any request form or consent of the landlord, requires work to be done on the subject portables in order for the tenant to continue to use them in for their present intended use. So if such external agency requires work on the subject portables, the landlord will not be obligated to secure the permits, undertake any of the necessary work, all of that stuff, of the rent, all of that is included there in that first paragraph. So I think that if we're looking at this contract, the way that it is written, it sounds like it is written to be good faith, that, hey, we didn't know this was an issue. Now it's an issue. We as a board are not going to make any moves to tell you you can't have kids there. But if an outside agency comes and tells us that without us going and tattletaling or whatever they think we're going to do, then we don't have the obligation to do any of the things in this agreement, it sounds like. So with that, I think that's enough for me to vote on this and say yes, because I think it addresses the issues that we had in our last meeting. So I'm okay with moving forward with the vote, but I know that we need a majority. So that will be my opinion.
I feel like my questions were answered. I did have some follow-up inquiries, and you know, based on the answers I received, I feel like I'm okay with voting on it.
through the chair, well, there is a vote in motion right now. We just kind of paused, so you can just continue with that vote.
So I'm going to go back to, or through the chair, may I proceed?
Yes.
Vice President Shabomahin? Oh, no. Okay.
No, it's Skip. Just go ahead, Skip.
Oh, Skip still. Got it. That was coming back. Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito?
Aye.
Trustee Bloom?
Aye.
Trustee Shabomahin? Should I come back?
At this point, she would need to abstain if she's not ready to vote.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like I'm at 90% there, but that 10% bothers me for some reason. You don't need my vote, so I'll abstain.
Motion carries would it be 4-1? Sorry, that's my quick.
It'd be, it's approved 4 with 1 abstention.
With 1 abstention. Thank you. We'll move on to 12B.
Thank you. We've been working with CSCA for as long as I've been here, and they recently brought up a wonderful opportunity to go after a state grant or a state funding opportunity that would allow our CSCA members who don't work for the full year to receive additional funds. The way the program works is staff would be eligible staff, which is not going to be all of our staff, but many of our CSCA employees would be allowed to set aside some additional money throughout the year. And the additional money they set aside would be matched by the state over the summer months. It's a wonderful opportunity for our staff to both practice sort of good financial habits of saving, to make sure that they're able to sort of weather months where they may not have income otherwise if they're not participating in either a 12-month plan or some kind of deferred payment plan. And I think most excitingly, it allows the district to get new money from the state to give our employees quite a bit more matching, a bit more money, including matching, potentially matching funds through the state for those summer months. There are relatively limited obligations on behalf of the district. We are required to manage the program, submit these requested amounts to the state, and we are responsible for paying the payroll taxes as a portion of the agreement here. Relatively small in the scheme of the money that our employees could be making, and obviously, depending on how much people choose to save, that'll have huge impacts on the total amount that this could cost the district through those additional payroll costs. Any questions on this agreement? We are pretty excited about this opportunity to bring in more money for our staff. Happy to answer any questions that I can. I know I have a homework assignment to hone in those numbers a little bit more for Trustee Alexander as well.
I will open the floor. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I see none. Do we have any comments from the public? I also see none, so I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve item 12B.
I will second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shibomagin,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0. And we will move into 13A, which is the consideration to approve resolution number 2020-2021/2021-13, which is the board members' excused absences. So I will entertain a motion.
There's nobody absent, so we don't have to vote on this. It's only when a member's absent.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. So 13B was tabled. So 13C, the consideration to approve the district representative to the county committee on school organization. The staff brought up that this was usually, the person was identified usually during the election time, and we didn't do that. So I will open up the floor if anyone would like to volunteer.
Through the chair, just to clarify, Gina, can you also confirm, this is the seat that meets once a year, right? Just to let you know.
In November.
As they manage their, committee signups. It's once a year.
It's typically held in November.
Through the chair, we're looking for one of the board members to sit on that committee.
Yes, it's a one-time thing.
Okay, I'll volunteer to do that.
Thank you.
Nobody else wants to.
So now we will move into our subcommittees.
Do we need to, through the chair, I believe we need to take action on 13A.
13A, the
Oh, I'm sorry, 13. The one, I'm sorry, the one we're on now where Trustee Alexander volunteered to be.
It's 13.
Oh, 13C?
D.
Oh,
I think it's C.
I'm
It's
on
C,
D.
13C.
so, okay, so just to clarify, we will be taking action on every single subcommittee.
I'm sorry, 13C is where we identified the representative from our Board of Trustees to attend this once a year meeting. And we need to take action on that. So we need to take action on 13.
And on that specific one, because usually our committees, we just appoint and designate. We don't.
On 13C?
No, just in our committees as a whole. Is it just that specific committee
Yeah.
we have to take action on? So on that designation, we do, but not on the other ones. The other ones will just be discussion. Got it. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to designate Trustee Alexander as the county committee representative.
I second. Sorry. Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomahin,
Aye.
Trustee Alexander,
I guess so. Aye.
Trustee Polito,
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0. So now we will move into our subcommittees. For each committee, there's 2 spots. So let's move, I guess we'll just go one by one. And so we'll go to 13D, our subcommittee facilities for discussion and or action. Subcommittee facilities, sorry.
Facilities, got it. Through the chair, I would like to stay on the facilities committee.
Is anyone else interested in the facilities?
Through the chair, I have a question for Trustee Polito.
Yes.
How often do you meet on that subcommittee?
We meet once a month, usually the first Tuesday of the month. And it's pretty consistent. It's not really that sporadic. I mean, sometimes we'll change the day if it conflicts, but we normally meet once a month, except in July, I believe. And then actually last year, I think we did meet in July.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, because I'm trying to figure out, am I gonna leave the other committees I'm on, subcommittees I'm on, or if I'm gonna stay, because then that would add an extra. So yeah.
All those great questions you normally have for our general, meetings. There's so many opportunities for those questions in this committee.
Yes, fun questions. I actually am interested in this committee. I'm just reluctant to say yes, or to say I want to represent the board on this committee because I'm on the budget committee presently and the school. Maybe I'm not on the school improvement plan, but I am with the coming back to school. So I don't know if I'm going to transfer to this one, which would mean I'm potentially on 3 committees, which is a lot. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm giving up.
Well, I mean, I can be the designated person, and as you guys, consider the other committees, if you see yourself become available, you can come and say, I'll participate. Because if 2 board members can be in any other committee, there might be one person that is no longer on a committee that they maybe were before.
Yeah, that sounds good. If there's like a blank space, no one else wants to be on the facilities committee, then, and I end up leaving another, then I'll join the facilities. I would love to.
I'm also happy to carry the torch by myself. No worries.
You do a great job. I'm just going to slow us up and talk about contracts and every little sentence. I want to know every little implication.
That's the good stuff. That's where the good stuff's at.
So let's go to 13E, the curriculum and instruction.
That, through the chair, that's a committee that I am interested in serving on.
May I also clarify with the CNI committee? We didn't necessarily designate like the committee that we just launched last week to improve the learning acceleration. And so we would imagine that a member on this committee would participate in those meetings.
I'm also interested in this committee as well. So I can.
Through the chair, Gina, the committee that you're talking about, the item 13G, the school improvement working group, is that what you were talking about, or is that additional?
That's additional.
Okay, thank you.
So let's move down to 13F, which is the budget committee. I don't know why my voice changed in that one.
Terry, changing it up, trying to keep us awake.
Keep us going.
I would like to remain on the budget committee.
Through the chair, can I get, there was no background on this one, and I understand what a budget is, but where is the time spent when the committee comes together? That's my question. Like, what is information you're reviewing or analyzing, or what kind of decision-making opportunities come up in that committee? That would be my question. I don't know if that's for you, Tam, because you've served on it before.
I actually think that's a question for Mr. Eager.
Oh, okay. Yeah, do tell.
I was chatting Gina to figure out which of us would take this. This is sort of meant to be the budget working group. I don't know and the sort of facilities committee, I think, certainly is a soft spot in my heart and is meant to be sort of a meeting monthly, long term. The budget committee, I think, is continuing the work in the budget working group, which is supposed to sort of ramp down as our budget sort of winds up. We could think about bringing it back for future years, but it wasn't necessarily intended to be, if the board wants to, we could obviously meet forever, but it was sort of intended to phase down as we sort of ramp up our SY 21-22 budget.
So are you saying we need a budget committee, subcommittee, or we don't?
I'm saying we certainly need a working group for the next couple of months to sort of help finish that work. Whether the board wants to continue that or that makes sense to do going forward, I think is a bigger question that's hard to answer.
So is this the committee that meets on Wednesdays?
Yeah, you've been a member of it, Trustee Polito.
I was supposed to be a member. However, the meetings were scheduled when I had board meetings at my day job. So actually, I can't even participate because I've seen that the dates conflict with my board meeting dates for my day job. So never mind.
So I'm actually quite interested in this as well. So if there's no one else who would also, I think I'll join the budget team just because my day job, experience. So I will also join you. So let's go down to 13G, which is the subcommittee for school improvement.
Through the chair, I'm also interested in working on that group.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if we want to diversify the pairings because I think both me and Trustee Alexander are interested in the same too.
I think it's a factor of the fact that, we both, having been working with classroom teachers and curriculum, and that's why my interest is in both of these, because that's my area of expertise.
I think it's great.
I'm not an expert at budgets or facilities.
Thank you. So we'll move on to 13H.
Through the chair, I have a quick question about this. And I have a question because I have a clarifying question. So I saw that there was 13H, that's a subcommittee for intergovernmental affairs, and then 13I for a subcommittee with Sequoia Union High School District. And normally, and it's not to say we have to continue this way, but I just want to understand why there was a distinction. Normally, the intergovernmental committee was meant to meet with any other agency, right? Whether it be the city of EPA, whether it be Sequoia Union High School District, it could even be the city of Menlo Park, right? Because we also serve Bellhaven. It could be meeting with even Menlo Park City School District, and it was supposed to be this committee that was going to be available to meeting to any intergovernmental agencies, but then I see it was split up, and I was just wondering if there was like any reason why it was done that way, or was it intentional, or just kind of how it formed?
I believe President Latu was also taking heed to what I had suggested was the two committees where one would be working in collaboration with city council members and then the other directly with Sequoia. But I would take board direction on what you all would like to do.
Okay. So the reason why I also asked is because at some point we were having 2x2x2 meetings, which means at one point, few years ago, it was Sequoia, Ravenswood, and the city of EPA. If you have two distinct board members and two distinct committees, what happens if there's a calling of all groups? Then you can't have 4 members of the board participating when the meetings overlap. That might not be a problem, but I'm just throwing it out there for everybody. I'm not even signing up for this committee, but I thought it would be helpful for everybody else to know kind of the way it's sometimes poses a conflict when you separate them out, and in some cases it might be a benefit, right?
Good point.
Yeah, I'm just putting it out there for whoever's interested to consider. That was it. That was my only comment.
I think you bring up super valid points. I think it's a bit more flexible to our schedules if we have kind of different people going to either meeting. And if there was a joint, this is just a hypothetical, if there was a 2x2x2 meeting, we could have one representative from either one attend so that there's only 2 present. That's just a thought. Unless you want to just combine them all.
I guess it would be for anyone interested in participating in either committee to determine if how they foresee this working. And like I said, I'm not one of those people, so I'm going to remove myself from that discussion.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Trustee Bloom.
I was going to say, I would be interested in the 8th grade transition and partnership area. I'm also interested in the working with the city as well, but I'm more interested in the subcommittee. Sorry, I'm like trying to figure out which letter it is. But I don't know if anyone else is interested in one of those.
I was going to say through the chair, I'm interested in H. I'm actually on the subcommittee, the intergovernmental affairs. Not that we've done much or been very active, but I have a feeling that could change. So I'm interested in subcommittee H, as Trustee Bloom started naming the subcommittees, subcommittee I, and so forth.
Yeah, I'm also interested in H just because I personally have a relationship with a lot of the council members as well as the staff, and also I as well. So,
Also, I just want to say, I feel like I'm signing up for too many because I'm looking at the number and that's 3. So I don't know if that's too many. So I think it just depends on what the cadence of meetings are.
Yeah.
Going forward would maybe look like.
And through the chair, that also affects me is when these meetings happen, because my day job doesn't let me do, I'm a teacher, so I can't not teach in order to go attend a meeting for this without taking a sick day.
Board committees are meant to fit the schedule of the board.
Okay, thank you.
For the most part, you work with staff to determine a date that works for the board. That's why the board subcommittees. Now, working groups and task force are led by staff, so board has to be flexible to whatever they determine, but board usually works with staff to find a time that works for. Now, that may not work for your other members, but that's kind of how it works.
So through the chair, that means then 413G is a subcommittee to participate on a working group, or is the working group our subcommittee? Like, which way is it going?
I would like to define it as a working group.
Got it. So
Right,
that
because we have several people from the community, staff, parents, and that's once a month, typically from 4 to 6. And then our learning acceleration committee, or the CNI, I think right now we just had our first meeting. I believe the cadence will be once a month as well.
And
In the evening, late afternoon. I should say late afternoon.
And I don't know how it worked previous to me joining the board, but the intergovernmental affairs subcommittee, I believe we might have met once. We did that at the discretion of the board members and the officials we were working with, the city officials. So it wasn't a regular time set by someone. It was just whenever folks were available.
So I think my thought is for 13I, Trustee Bloom, if that's okay. I think if that's okay, if you're still interested in that group, I think for 13H, I would join Vice President Shabomahim as our 2-point. And then I'll also join you as well on the joint school board. So for 13I as well.
And through the chair, I don't know if we can go back, but maybe we can't. We've left it already, but maybe we just, I don't know that I have availability to join the facilities committee. So don't know how to do that since we've left the item officially.
Oh, no worries. So I think how I was doing it in my mind is we're just going to go through it once, kind of see where everybody lands, and then we would go back just to clarify who's on 13D, E, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Just to also confirm that everybody is still interested in the ones that they've signed up for. So for 13D, for the facilities team, I have Trustee Polito and Vice President Shabomaheen. For 13E, I have Trustee Alexander, and Trustee Bloom was interested. Okay, so for 13F, which is the budget, I have Vice President Shabomaheen and myself. For 13G, I have Trustee Alexander and Trustee Bloom. For 13H, Intergovernmental Affairs, I have Vice President Shabomaheen and myself. And then for 13I, I have Trustee Bloom and myself as well. 1, 2, 3. Does that sound right to everyone? I think for the budget meeting, just put a question mark on my name. I'm there, but I'm like 90% there.
Through the chair.
100% commitment.
What'd you say, Trustee Polito?
I said we need 100% commitment all the way through.
Exactly. Every meeting, you got to be there. Well, the good news is, I was going to say, is that it sounds like there's like an expiration. They're going to be like 6 more and that's it. So that's what I think I just heard from Mr. Eager. I don't know.
Well, there's also a bond that we probably would like maybe the budget committee to work towards.
Oh, now you throw that at us. So basically the budget.
Can we go back?
No, not yet. But
Okay.
I just clarify that Superintendent Sudaria added that. That was not necessarily the initial scope here. And so.
Can I add a contingent that there is a possibility of a bond subcommittee? That needs to be, just kidding.
through the chair, though, it could also be, as Trustee Polito has mentioned, it could be a subcommittee for the facilities, subcommittee of the facilities.
We do the early discussion thought process, but that's not necessarily the people that are going to be leading in the formal committee when volunteers come into play. Trustee Shabomaheen, so don't run away from the facilities committee before it's started.
Right, the budget or the facilities.
How did you know what I was thinking? I was like, oh shucks, I'm doomed either way. No, I'm just kidding. I'd love to work on the bond. It's for the students.
Perfect. Do we have any other comments or changes? Superintendent Gina, do we have to, is this an action item?
Yes, they're all action items, but I think you can do them all together like a consent agenda.
Well, you can't do them all together like a consent
No?
agenda. It's not in the
Oh,
consent.
that's right. It's not a consent agenda. One at a time.
Okay, so we will go back to 13D. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve 13D and the designated trustees Polito and Shabomine.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to 13E, Subcommittee for Curriculum. I will entertain a motion.
I will entertain a motion to approve the subcommittee for curriculum instruction with Trustee Bloom and Alexander serving on that committee.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and we will move down to Subcommittee F, Budget.
I move to approve 13F, the subcommittee for budget with the Trustee Shabomine and Latu as the designated members.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to 13G, Subcommittee for School Improvement. I will entertain a motion. Sorry.
Committee for School Improvement Working Group with Trustee Bloom and Trustee Alexander serving.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito. I'm sorry, Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
The motion carries, and we will move on to 13H, which is the Intergovernmental Affairs. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee with Trustee Shabomaheen, Trustee Latu serving.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
Motion carries, and we will move on to 13I, the Subcommittee for Joint School Board and Superintendent Committee. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Sequoia Joint Board Committee with the designees, Trustee Latu and Trustee Bloom.
I second.
Roll call, please.
President Latu,
Aye.
Vice President Shabomaheen.
Aye.
Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Polito.
Aye.
Trustee Bloom.
Aye.
And the motion carries. So now we will move on to item J, if we have any board reports or communications.
Through the chair. I wanted to make the comment that when I was on my walk the other day, passing by Bellhaven School, I saw the contractors hard at work putting in all the cables and whatnot for the telecommunication upgrades. And so that looked very exciting.
Through the chair, I also want to say that I attended the Menlo Park speaker series with Trustee Polito and Superintendent Sudaria, and I was very happy to hear what they had to say and how they represented Ravenswood School, our school district, and the ideas and thoughts that they put out there. And I was just happy that they said the things that they did and they represented us really well. So I was very thankful for that.
And through the chair, I'd like to echo what Trustee Bloom said, that was a very, very good speaker series. And I enjoyed very much listening to both of you and what you had to say.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I just want to say, is it time for us to take down our announcement off the website for an available seat on the board? It might be time. I know we're leaving it there for a while purposely, but we might want to take it down now. If we're all for it, yeah.
Noted, noted. Anyone else? All right, so the next regular board meeting will be February 11th, 2021. So thank you all for your time, and we will adjourn this meeting at 10:01 p.m. Have a lovely night, everyone. Thank you.
Trustees. Thank you, team.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Superintendent. Get some rest.
Yes, you too, Ms. Latu. Bye.
Night.